Hello, I'm Bob Brown, and this is 2020 in Touch. Tonight on 2020, you'll meet three courageous families. Each has a child who feels trapped in the wrong body. They're called transgender children. And for the first time, these children, ages 6, 10, and 17, and their parents are going public, sharing their intimate stories with Barbara Walters.
There are no numbers on just how many transgender children exist. We do know that they are rare, but more and more parents have embraced them. No longer isolated, families are now connecting at transgender conferences like this one in Philadelphia.
You stupid homosexual man, woman. What are you doing in this school? You don't belong here.
In workshops, these transgender children share stories of pain and embarrassment from relentless teasing and bullying back home.
She knows about me being transgender, and she knows about the bullying, but she hasn't done anything.
Here, these children are safe to be themselves, but in the outside world, transgender children are often victims of discrimination and hate crimes. You're both scared?
Yes.
Of what someone might do to her?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes. You know, could you read it in the paper? You see it in the media all the time.
It's a mean world.
Perhaps most devastating can be rejection by their own families.
The worst thing you can do to your kid is say, I don't love you because of who you are. That's a horrible, horrible message for your kid, and it's going to lead them down a road of catastrophe, really.
In fact, a study by San Francisco State University confirms that trans children rejected by their families are 4 times as likely to attempt suicide and use illegal drugs, and twice as likely to become HIV infected. But for those accepted by their parents, these risks were dramatically reduced.
You know, I feel bad for parents that can't give that to their children. Some of them just can't put aside their own bigotry or feelings or enough to say, it doesn't matter, I love you if you're gay, lesbian, transgender. Why should it matter? This is your child.
Joining us now from our affiliate, KGO in San Francisco, is Dr. Caitlin Ryan, a clinical social worker and director of the Family Acceptance Project at San Francisco State University. Dr. Ryan, you're about to publish a study that's the first of its kind on how children who are bisexual, gay, lesbian, or transgendered are affected by rejection. Now, rejection is something that is painful to any child. Is it different or worse for transgender children?
What we specifically looked at, Bob, was how rejection and acceptance affects gender nonconforming children, including transgender children. And we found that there were high levels of rejection for children who identified as transgender, but also there were levels of rejection for children who reported gender nonconforming behaviors. And those children were much more likely to be at higher risk for depression, for suicide attempts, for substance abuse, and for HIV infection than children whose parents did not pressure them to conform to gender stereotypes.
But what kind of families did you talk to for this study?
We talked to a very wide range of families who were accepting, ambivalent, and rejecting of their children. And one of the most important things we found was that parents who supported their children's gender expression, those children were much less likely to report risk. They were doing much better. Their health and mental health was much better than those parents who forced their children to comply with gender expectations. This is actually a very large study, Bob, and we'll be publishing it over a period of years. And we decided, even though these findings about transgender children, gender nonconforming children hadn't been published, given the broadcast, it's so important for parents to have this critical information to make very important decisions about their children's well-being.
Are there specific reasons why families reject these children? Are they issues of faith or issues of cultural upbringing? What are the most important issues that are involved?
One of the things we found was that parents want the best for their children. Many, many parents are afraid that if their children are gender nonconforming, really stick out in the world, particularly in certain cultures, that they'll be much more vulnerable. They'll be at very high risk. Many of the parents that we interviewed were fearful of what had happened to Matthew Shepard and were afraid that something like that could happen to their children. So there are a lot of reasons really why parents force their children to conform, one of the main reasons is they want their children to have what they think is a good life. But of course, those parents are doing what they think is best based on culture or custom and not on research.
And what kind of pressures do they put on these kids?
For children who are very young, there are some children who from a very early age feel that they're in the wrong body. And those are little boys who want to play with dolls or do ballet or dress in tutus or dress like their sister or play with their sister's toys. And parents who are forcing their children would take the dolls away. They would give them a truck. They wouldn't allow them to dress in their sister's clothes. They would tell them that they're wrong. As children get older, parents' pressures become more extreme. We've interviewed children whose parents with young boys who would move their hands a lot, and parents might think that that would be feminine. They would tie their hands at night so that they would try to restrict their movement, for example.
Is there a point that you consider overriding in your research, or the most important point for parents to learn from what you've studied?
The most important thing we found was that supporting a child's gender expression is the most important thing that parents can do to support their children's well-being. Children who are gender nonconforming may or may not grow up to become transgender in later life. They may be heterosexual, they may be lesbian, gay, or bisexual. No one really knows when they're children. So when parents see those gender non-traditional or non-conforming behaviors, instead of shaming their child and humiliating them, they should support and accept their child, and that will be the best investment that they can make in their child's future.
Again, Dr. Caitlin Ryan, who is the director of the Family Acceptance Project at San Francisco State University. Dr. Ryan, thanks very much for sharing your research with us.
Thank you.